Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be going over the top 10 cards from the new expansion, Twilight Masquerade. This is coming out in around a week, maybe two, at some point near the end of May. And it's a main set, so it will have a good chunk of cards, although we will be mostly looking at proxies. These are from Omnipoke. So yeah, you can find that online. And so we can look at them in English, although of course certain names and stuff might not be finalized, but the attacks and stuff are all good. And then with that out of the way, I want to talk about the grading criteria for these. I actually did a bit of a different system of a big board of all the cards from the new set that I've ranked. Not all cards are on there. If they're not on there, well, one, I could have forgotten them, although hopefully not. Most of the cards are not on there. One, there's like pre-evolutions, which, I mean, what am I supposed to say about those? I don't think I ranked any of the pre-evolutions. One is worth mentioning for GLC later on, but it's kind of weird. And then for standard, though, none of the pre-evolutions really matter. Um, except for Dracloak. That's not in today's video. It's not in the top 10, but it does kind of matter. And then also it's all out of 10. Every card on there is out of 10. It's in the Google Sheet, which will be linked down below, so you can just scroll through that. That is constantly changing. I've updated it when I have new thoughts on it, but this video is directly from that sheet. Although obviously I will be actually talking about the cards and explaining some of my reasoning because these top 10 are really interesting. Also, this set's really good. This is probably, I think it's the best set we've seen in a little while. There are a few cards that are 10 out of 10s, and while this is my first time ranking cards, I don't predict, looking at previous sets, I feel like there weren't too many cards I'd give 10 out of 10. The most recent one I would have considered maybe Charizard EX, although I don't know. I actually probably wouldn't have given that a 10 out of 10, although obviously it's very good right now. And then I guess staple cards, also cards I think there's I think Switch is in the set that's not ranked. I know Pokemon Catcher's in the set that's not ranked. So cards that are just reprints of cards that already exist aren't here. Enhanced Hammer should be ranked, as that is not currently in standard. Although I don't remember, it's not in the top 10. But let's hop right into things, and there are actually some cards that are tied. As I said, they are ranked from out of 10, but if they're the same ranking, there's a few cards here that we have at 7 out of 10, and so if a card's of the same number, it's a very similar level to the cards around it, and I wouldn't really have much of an issue if you could argue one over the other, but also they are going to be in order. So coming in at the first honorable mention, we have two of them. 7 out of 10. We got Jamming Tower. This is a stadium. Pokemon tool cards in play. Both yours and your opponents have no effect. This is pretty interesting. I believe almost the same, if not the same, as Lysander Labs, which just does this. Stopping Pokemon tools is really interesting right now because, well, one, they see a bunch of play, but also people play Town Store, which can bump this. It's not played a ton, but it's played some, and a lot of stadiums are just played a little bit. But notably, this is really good against Gardevoir EX. That's a deck that's not seeing a ton of play, but it is on the rise. And I guess it's a top 10 deck in terms of plays, and it uses tools a lot. We can literally take knockouts by playing this card down, or just completely stop your opponent from doing what they want to do. Also, Force Seal Stone is really good. That's the best tool in the game. And then there are some A-Spec tools. There's just a lot of tools, and they're pretty solid. So I think this has potential to be a decent stadium, and also just a general stadium for certain decks. That being said, I don't think it's an amazing card, but it's pretty close to the top 10. If you have this there, I would not say that's crazy at all. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's my number 12 card. Next, the number 11 card, my second honorable mention, is Greninja EX. This card's really interesting. I've talked about it some, and it's been talked about a lot. It got a lot of hype when it was revealed, but also it's not well, it's not the best card. It's not the best stage 2 EX in the set, or EX certainly by a bit of a margin, but 310 HP, your fighting type using Water Energy, Duplicates Barrage, Water Colorless, Disco 2 Energy, do 120 to 2 your opponent's Pokemon. I think I recently made a video talking about a deck with this, and it's pretty good. And then Ninja Blade, 170 for 1 water, and you can search your deck for any card put into your hand. Arguably a better attack. They're both really good though. But there are some weird things. You can't accelerate to this Pokemon with Palkia V-Star, Origin Form Palkia V-Star, which is a little annoying. You can accelerate to the basic in Stage 1, but not the Stage 2 because it's not water. and double turbo energy reduces your damage for the second attack. The first attack's really good, but obviously it's not one-shotting a lot of Pokemon, a lot of the EXs, so that's a bit of a downside. But outside of that, I mean, it's still really solid stat-wise. There are a number of Pokemon cards from the set that are insanely good stat-wise, and Greninja EX is probably one of them. 170 for 1, plus our training card is really good. This is kind of like Garchomp EX in some ways. It's I think I made a whole video talking about it and how they are kind of mirrors of one another, which is pretty interesting. But this card's really solid. Again, 7 out of 10, which means it's pretty good. But also, it could definitely be better. As I said, these two cards, though, are pretty good. I think Greninja EX will see play as its own deck in like a top 20 or so deck. Sounds about right. It might see more play than that early on because it obviously is going to be a new deck from the set, and it's going to have a bit of a learning curve with the deck because there are a lot of different options you can play in it, and that's pretty cool. And also, you could just play it pretty straightforward. Ninja Blading a few different techs, kind of almost play it like Charizard EX. But yeah, a very solid EX. It's a stage 2 though. That's a bit of a downside. Stage 2s have been so good recently, so it's a bit hard to say that's a downside, but it's pretty solid. Next, number 10 here, we have Thwacky. Again, this is going to be the last 7 out of 10 card, so it is at the same level as those other cards. This is interesting. I guess it does. We need to talk about so we need to bring up some context here, but its ability says it's a stage 1, obviously, and it's a single prizer. If your active Pokemon has the ability Festival Lead, you may see this translated different ways, by the way, but Festival Lead, which is on um, Diplin, Goldeen, and Swirlix, I believe, and you may search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. You can use this for each Thwacky. If you're familiar with Pidgeot EX, that card's really, really, really good right now. And this can search out multiple cards every single turn. Of course, you do need the Pokemon with the ability in the active. What does the ability do? It actually lets you attack twice with the attacks on the cards. You can't copy TMs. And you need it, but only if you have a certain stadium in play. It's a little weird, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what the ability does. You could play it in decks that want to use the ability, the Festival Lead ability, but you can just toss in a few copies of the Goldeen or the Swirlix, and they're both basic Pokemon with 1 retreat. There are ways to reduce retreat by 1. There's a tool which is Rescue Board, and then there's the Stadium in I honestly don't remember. Oh, Beach Court. There we go. And Beach Court and Rescue Board are both pretty solid, pretty easy to come by, and searchable. Arvin is a way to do it. It's not super easy to search them all the time, but it's not that hard. And especially if you can search for literally anything. And then with Bang Bang Drum, you want to get probably 2 Thwackies into play, and you're searching for any 2 cards every single turn. Of course, if this Pokemon with the ability is not in the active, that's a bit of a problem. The idea is you have an attacker, you have free retreat on the Goldeen and you kind of like switch them out, but there are times when this isn't always on, so it's not just a direct upgrade of Pidgeot, which would be absurd. If it didn't have to have this Pokemon with an ability in the active, a certain ability, then it would be absurdly broken. But this is a card I think's gone under the radar for a lot of people. I've heard it talked about some, but not a ton. I guess I've heard about talked about some, and I don't think it's like the best card in the set. It's number 10 though. I think it's really good and a card that could be played in a lot of decks. There's also some funny combos. There's Swim Freely. You could actually play it in, and it's pretty good there. It's kind of absurdly good there, but that's not super great in terms of a deck. It's pretty bad right now, to be honest. But with this new Thwacky, it could be good. All in all, though, I think it's a pretty broken ability if it can be used to the full extent, and so it has like the high risk high reward. It could potentially have some less consistency than something like Barrel or Pidgeot, or Curly or whatever, because it's not always active, this ability, if you don't have the Pokemon in play and if your opponent's able to punish you, and so potentially you need more bench protection as well. We'll talk about another Pokemon that I think is going to be really highly played, maybe a little overplayed, but we'll get to that. But that will not be so good. It will one-shot your Swirlixes or Goldeens on the bench, and there are a few Pokemon that do that. Number 9 here, we got ourselves the first 8 out of 10 card. Tatsugiri, a dragon type basic. Its ability attract customers if it's in the active. You can look at the top 6 cards. There's a bit of an error on this card. Reveal is kind of messed up. But yeah, you reveal a supporter you find there and put it into your hand. and shuffle the other cards back in. And of course, the big thing here is it kind of works like what we were just talking about. You give this Pokemon, it has 1 retreat, reduce it by 1 with Rescue Board or with Beach Court, and then you can send this up every single turn, get yourself an extra supporter. It's not as, you don't build around it as much, but it's a nice little 1 of, potentially 2 of in a deck. You could even play 4 of it, but I would not. But you can just play a copy or 2 of it in your deck, throw it into the active, and it really bails you out of a lot of scenarios. It's like Pokegear every single turn. If you know me, you know that I'm not a massive fan of the Pokegear card because it's an item and it doesn't always have super high value, but you only use it once. It's a card you play, you're done with it. Tatsugiri is not like that. You can use this every single turn, or at least every single turn you're knocked out. And so Tatsugiri is really good to preserve your consistency in the late game, especially with the amount of disruption in the game. There's Iono, there's Roxanne, there's Judge, which isn't played as much or as disruptive, but it is played. And then there's a new card, which is pretty much like Roxanne and Iono. And so Tatsugiri will bail you out of scenarios late game, or hopefully bail you out of scenarios late game where you need a supporter, either a draw supporter like Researcher, Iono, maybe not Iono late game, or Roxanne, or whatever, some draw supporter, or of course Boss's Orders late game, which is really important, especially with right now the most played ace spec and the best one by far in standard is Prime Catcher. There are some other good ones, but if you know this set, there are some other good ace specs that are like really, really, really good, really on a similar power level to Prime Catcher, and yeah, you won't always be playing Prime Catcher, and obviously you won't always have it late game. You might play it early game, or you might just not have it. And so you will be running boss, and you need to hit boss with probably Tatsugiri late game. You could draw into it, hope you draw into it off of that like few card hand off of Iono, which could work, but it's not a very good thing to be hopeful for. You, of course, have the barrel, but this will give you another out to it, and a really solid out to let you dig 6 more cards into the deck for that card you need to win the game. I think Tatsugiri is going to be really great. Also, there is Lance, which turns out Dragon Pokemon, which is a supporter. It's kind of bad right now, but in the next set, I think it might be. I think it'll see play. Is it good? It's not that good, but you can get Tatsugiri, which is nice, and so another reason to play it. But overall, if you played with Jirachi with Escape Board, this will function very similarly as well. Next up, number 8, we have actually 2 cards. Normally, I would not want to group 2 cards together, but they are literally, well, Palafin EX is only playable with the single prize Palafin, and then the stage 1 Palafin, the single prizer, is essentially useless without the Palafin EX. It just does 30 for 2 and has 100 HP. It's pretty bad. But the ability on Palafin, 0 to Hero, once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the active to the bench, you may search your deck for Palafin EX and switch it with this Pokemon. Any cards attached, damage counters, all that good stuff gets switched and stays on, so that's nice. And then Palafin EX has its ability that says it can only be put into play using Palafin's ability, which obviously is a downside, but that's fine, I guess. It is what it is, because if that wasn't the case, it's kind of broken in terms of its raw stats. It had 340 HP on a stage 1 single prizer. This is the highest HP we've ever seen, tied for it. On regular cards, we've seen higher technically. And then Hero Spirit, as I said, it's not a good ability, but Giga Impact, the attack here, is going to be doing 250 for 1 energy. You can attack next turn, which normally is not a problem at all. It's a minor problem, though you do need to switch, and Professor Terra's scenario really is not a good option at all because it will get it into your hand, which is not where you want it, but you could just use switch itself, so that's not that big of a deal. It's a minor downside, but not that bad. You need to be playing a ton of switch. There is an escape rope, which to me is like a massive downside of this card, but you will be running for switch, and that will allow you to kind of get going. You can retreat with the single prize Palafin. There are some different things going on here, which means that it should be okay. And of course, the best thing about this card is its raw stats are just absurdly good, and it's 1 energy, right? It's just it's really, really, really good. And so I think it's just, I've talked about this card a lot. I thought it was absurdly good when I first saw it, and I'm just checking now. I'm looking at my phone separately. There's a Finizen that evolves, but unfortunately, it will not be able to work with these Palafins because it switches before evolving. If it was the other way around, which would actually be a little weird, then it would not work. Or then it would work, but unfortunately it doesn't. So you can still use Palafin EX, though. And there's a single prize Palafin, which is actually, there's a few single prize Palafins that are pretty good. There's one that I think it does 210 for 2 water, and then there's one that does like 130 for 1 water or something. I don't know. They're pretty decent though. I think Palafin's a really cool Pokemon, but this card has insane stats. Of course, it does have some pretty negative downsides with the fact you can only play it as kind of like a stage 2. You need to have a stage 1, but then do some more stuff. Instead of Rare Candy, you need to switch. But then you have, you just have some really insane stats. So if you look at this like a stage 2 EX, it's like good, but not insane. And so, it's not like if you just look at it, stage 1, 340 HP, 250 for 1, absurdly broken. It's not just that. And there isn't a ton of ways to heal it, unfortunately, either without like Turbo Scenario, which won't work super well, but you could use it as well. I think this might see play in, honestly, Goldengo EX. We've seen Goldengo Palafin as a deck. Not played much, but it is played occasionally. I guess I've seen it played in Japan, and so you could play it with Palafin EX. You can play it in Lost Zone. There are a lot of different ways, and I think it's a really cool card that I'm looking forward to seeing how people play. Again, it has that like high upside, high downside card, which we see a lot in this set. Number 7, this is again an 8 out of 10 card, so really solid. Iron Thorns EX here, its ability initializes the main reason why it sees play, or why it will see play. Again, these cards are all out in Japan, I believe, and so they haven't seen play. They have all seen play in City League tournaments. But initialize, well, this Pokemon is in the active spot. Pokemon with the rule box of play, except future Pokemon don't have any abilities, and this is super nice that it doesn't turn off future. Because this means that it will not be turning off your own future Pokemon's abilities, which will be like the Iron Crown EX, right? It will be turning that off, or it would be if it wasn't for the fact that it specifically says it doesn't, which is really nice. Oh, I skipped the next one. We'll be getting to that one in just a moment. But Iron Thorns EX here is obviously its HP 230 is pretty nice. Bolt Cyclone 140 for Lightning Colorless movement energy from this to your bench it's just okay, but its ability here it counters Charizard, which is well, that's pretty good, right? So also I was just checking again on my phone. I think this is a the British spelling of initialize. I actually don't know. I could just be wrong, but yeah. Anyway, so obviously. Um, yeah, it's nice to counter Charizard. It's really good against Charizard. It's good against Pidgeot. It's good against Chimpow, I guess. Um, so it can turn off Radiant Greninja, Radiant Charizard. Will not obviously be turning off. I should just show you Dragapult, so Dracloak, Curlia. There's a lot of things it's not turning off as well, but I think it's a really solid counter option, especially when Charizard EX is the most played deck in the game, realistically the best deck in the game, and then you're looking at Radiant Greninja, super highly played. I made a video talking about the most played Pokemon of each type. Radiant Greninja, the most played water Pokemon, which is insane. Despite only being a one of, that means like a ton of people are playing it. It's really good. And then, yeah, it's just a pretty solid card as well. It will one-shot Lugia V-Star, I guess, not if you have double turbo, but then there's some stuff going on here. I think it's going to be honestly pretty not fun to play. I'm not a big fan of this card in terms of game design. We've seen a lot of cards that like it as well, but it's pretty good. Just to counter Charizard, to be honest, but Charizard's so good, and this can be teched into any deck, and it's really good against Charizard, good against some other things as well. It doesn't completely hard counter Charizard either, though, but it is a bit of a pain for them. As I said, number 6 here is Dragapult EX, 320 HP, but Phantom Dive here. Fire Psychic on a stage 2 EX, kind of sketchy, but it does 200 to your opponent's active, 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench in any way you like. It's kind of like Dragapult VMAX, but better in terms of its damage by a noticeable amount, especially to the active. There are ways to buff this, there are different ways to power it up. It's really weird. It could be playing Neo Upper Energy. I do think this card is like probably the most hyped card out of the new set. Most hyped or second most hyped. It's really good. I think it's a little overhyped. Obviously, it's not the second highest card on this list, but it's still really good. Doing 200 is obviously, that's a really solid chunk of damage. Not insane, but decent. And then 6 on the bench is really nice. You're looking to hit 220, 280, stuff like that. 330, you're really never going to get there, but 280, you do 200 plus the 60, or 6 damage counters is 260, then you can buff it with something. There are lots of different ways. There's some really funny looking decks with Dragapult. It's going to be played in a ton of different ways because of its awkward energy cost, but I have really no doubt that this deck will be good. No weakness. High HP is really, really good. Charizard EX, a little higher HP, but pretty much the same. And that has a weakness, which has been countered some, and people have been trying to use that to counter it. Dragapult just doesn't have that. It will be just picking off bench Pokemon as well. You're looking at Pokemon like Charmander, Pidgey, Frigibax, Bidoof, but keep in mind that, well, one, you can't block this with Manaphy or Jirachi, which is really good, and also but separately, you can play like 70 HP basics, but you do have Hawlucha then to do that 10 extra damage. There's a lot of different things going on here. A lot of different Radiant Pokemon actually being played in the decks it's being played in, which is really weird, but really cool. I think Dragapult EX will be fun. Kind of swingy, as I said, it really destroys basics, so it will be able to punish bad setups, but also will have bad setups of its own, so I don't know how that's going to go, but it's going to be really good. Also, I mentioned Dracloak earlier in the video. Its ability is the same as Pidgeotto with Airmail, but it lets you look at the top two, put one to your hand, put the other on the bottom of your deck. It's kind of like the Curly and Gardevoir deck situation. Not to the same extent, because Curly is better than Dracloak, but also Dragapult is better than Gardevoir. Dragapult EX better than Gardevoir EX. So a little different, but pretty similar, where you just have a nice stage one that's actually really solid to allow you to set up better and just have more consistency. And as I said, you have different ways to power it up. They're not great. None of them are truly amazing, but they're all pretty solid, and it'll definitely figure out a way, probably multiple ways to see top tier success. As I said, I think this is going to be the most played new deck out of the set. I mean, most of the cards we looked at aren't new decks, but Dragapult EX is going to be a new deck. It's going to be so played. I think it will be the most played deck when the new set drops. It could be Charizard EX, but I think it'll be Dragapult EX just based on how things have gone in the past. It could be Lawson as well. Lawson gets some nice little buffs, but Dragapult is just like, it's really good. It's a really solid Stage 2 EX, and we've seen them be pretty dominant in the past, so I have no doubt about this card. Next up, 5. Okay, I'm going to be... I have something to admit. We have a bunch of A-specs on this list, which is kind of weird because you can't play all of them. But I think Legacy Energy is not as good as Prime Catcher. I think it's a little worse, but it's a little different as well. But the other two are pretty much on, in my opinion, the same playing field, and actually pretty kind of similar to Prime Catcher, as I'll mention. Legacy Energy, though, is a special energy, provides an energy of every type, or yeah, it's kind of weird how Pokemon works with special energies, but provides every type. This can be used most notably within Lugia V-Star decks as essentially a Rainbow, Aurora, or whatever energy, which can be used to power up a wide variety of attackers. There's a new Ogerpon, a Water Ogerpon, which is kind of good. There's just a bunch of different Pokemon, and Iron Hand ZX is played. There's a different Ogerpon as well. The fighting one's pretty good. There's just a ton of things. Lumineon V, Legacy Energy. And then on top of that, it says when the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage, your opponent takes one less prize card. That is absurd. This cannot be looped because they won't take an extra one, but this is still pretty absurd because this just means you essentially get an extra turn of the game realistically. There are certain times when this wouldn't be true, but for the most part, it is true. That's really good. An extra turn, an extra attack, an extra like 200 damage or whatever, potentially more, but this card's so good. It can be used in literally any deck. It won't be used in literally any deck because it's not really a general ace spec. Prime Catcher is like a general ace spec, can be used and have value in any deck. Master Ball, not as good as Prime Catcher, but can have value in any deck. And as I said, the other two that we'll talk about could have value in any deck. But Legacy Energy, has value, not insane value in any deck. But in certain decks, it's just so good. It gives you way more techy options. Radiant Charizard you could tech in. I don't know if... I think Radiant Charizard is going to be kind of bad in the next set. Not terrible by any means. I think it will see play. It might even see more play because, like, Dragapult. But I don't think it will need to, but you could do that. I own Hand ZX and decks that don't run Lightning Energy as just a Rainbow Energy. And then on top of that, you're turning all these Pokemon that are kind of like multi-prizers into single prizes. Pokemon that give up one prize go into 0 prizes. That's insane, meaning if your opponent's having a dead hand, but they can somehow attack. There are definitely games like that where they have an attacker powered up, but nothing else. You Legacy Energy, and they don't get the card off the prizes, so they don't get that one card that could potentially just save them and bail them out of that really bad situation. And Legacy Energy, it's really good. Why is it only 5? There are just better ace specs. I guess just better for general purposes. If you have a dead hand, you draw Legacy Energy. That's probably not really going to do anything for you. If you're gonna get donked, you're still gonna get donked, even if you have legacy energy. So it's not bailing you out of that scenario, and it can be used for Hail Marys in the late game. It's a really solid late game card, but like early game, it's not that good. It does open up some different opportunities, but it's still really, really, really good. Not as good as the other ones, though. Number 4, though, moving up to the next and the first of two 9 out of 10 cards here. These cards, in my opinion, are so, so absurdly good. They're not broken necessarily, but they're pretty close. First of all, you have Secret Box. I know a lot of people are not massive fans of this card. I've heard some people say it's bad. I don't really get that at all. Obviously, you can have your own opinions, but I don't really get people saying this card's bad. This card's so good. I had it originally switched with the number 3 card, but I changed my mind. I do think the number 3 card is obviously, I think it's better than the number 4 card. They're pretty close, though. They're both 9 out of 10s, and the top two are actually 10 out of 10, which is so insane. I'll talk about them. But you have Secret Box here, which says search your deck for one item, one tool, one support, and one stadium. Reveal them, put them into your hand. But you do need to discard 3 cards from your hand first to do this. So there's the discard 3. That's not good, right? That's obviously a downside. But getting any 3 card, these 4 cards is insane. An item is really good. This gets you not anything from your deck, but well, pretty much anything except for a special energy or those other types of trainers, which you're obviously getting. And then the supporter is really good, right? It's assuming you haven't played your supporter, you don't have the supporter you need. It's really, really, really good. It's, I mean, completely, honestly, kind of game changing. If you already have the supporter you need, it's not, it doesn't really do anything, but whatever. Getting the item's still nice, and then getting a Pokemon tool is nice, right? So that can obviously Arven see a lot of play. Of course, this can get Forest Steel Stone to use that and to just get any card. So you could literally just play this, play it for Seal Stone. Obviously, you'll get some benefit from items and supporters, potentially stadiums, but just play for Seal Stone. Secret Box all of a sudden becomes Computer Search. It's essentially just Computer Search. Computer Search is really good and expanded. I will say Computer Search would be better in expanded than standard because of just certain dynamics of the game. Expanded is a faster format, less combo oriented, and like sure there are like combos. I guess you like rare candy plus Charizard is a kind of a combo. There's certain control combos. There are some combos like Lugia Archeops is kind of combo-y, but not as intense as like expanded where you just need like 10 different cards on your turn. And there are some that just completely true combo decks and expanded as well, which are just they're crazy. So Computer Search is better in those, but Secret Box under format like that than standard. But Secret Box still discarding 3 obviously not ideal, but and discarding 3 is a pain. I know that it is like an issue, but you get like you just get set up for the turn. When you look at the ace spec, there's a few things to consider, but in terms of just raw power level, you want it at the level of the supporter. That's kind of what you're looking for. Prime Catcher is the prime example of it. It's literally just Guzma. It's essentially just boss's orders. It's better. The switching is important now, but it's not like the biggest deal. It's not why it's played. But Secret Box is the level of a supporter. Essentially, it's kind of like Arven. It's actually pretty comparable to Arven because it gets the tool and the item plus a supporter plus a stadium, but you do discard 3. I would say it's better than Arven, but yeah, it's different. The one issue is playing this with Arven feels weird. You don't ever want to Arven for this. I mean, there are certain scenarios, but pretty niche because then the supporter's not going to have any value, and you don't want to play this and then grab this off of Arven. That's kind of weird. It's not terrible. It could have value, but you're wasting your supporter there, and then on the other side of things, it just gets kind of weird. I don't know. Playing it with Arven doesn't feel amazing. The idea of this is going to be for like turbo-y, combo-y decks, where turn 1 you should just go really hard, or in Dragapult decks, potentially. Probably not Dragapult because Ursaluna is so good, and then the other ace spec we'll talk about also is really solid. But and Prime Catcher is really solid, and Legacy Energy is really solid. We got just honestly a bunch of really solid ace specs. But Secret Box, you're looking at it in like Roaring Moon EX. You can just go really fast. Sure, losing Prime Catcher is unfortunate, but we don't have time for Prime Catcher. You need to be going. You need to go. You need to get that turn 1 attack. You're looking at a lot of other decks that just want to get that turn 1 really powerful setup. Like like something really good, Secret Box could be a great include. And then of course just any deck that needs more consistency. Lugia V Star. I don't know. Lugia V Star would love this ace spec, but then it would love Legacy energy, right? So it may be beat out by some of the ace specs a lot, some of the more niche ace specs in certain decks, but I do think Secret Box is really good. Just in terms of like a raw card, it's arguably the best card in the set. I think in context it is a little worse, but it's really good. If you look at this versus Prime Catcher, of course you can like Arvin for Prime Catcher, but on the other hand, you can Secret Box for Boss to give you that Gust option. So this does have Gust, not obviously the same level. It's not just a Gust card, but it could be used as like a Gust card in certain scenarios, but of course can be used for just so many different things. I think the big idea is if you can get good value off the stadium and the tool, then this is an insane card. If you don't, it just kind of it's like a good ace spec, but not like the best. So that's the question. If you got a deck, you got a few tools that you want. It's probably not just an Arvin deck. But you like play like two tools that are really solid, especially Force Seal Stone. If you play Force Seal Stone, Secret Box is insane. And like another tool you want. And then the stadium, you need like whatever. We looked at Jammy Tower. There's like Arge Zone. There's Templicino. There are a few different stadiums that are pretty good and pretty versatile. But yeah, getting the item and supporter is so good. Discarding 3, I guess not that big of a deal. Also, Barrel, this could be really solid. And Barrel decks, actually, I like that a lot. I didn't really think about it that much. But Prime Catcher's value it's not like bad in Barrel decks, but you're not going to hit it consistently because barrel decks are kind of just drawing whatever and hoping. But barrel decks aren't super played right now, at least not decks that run barrel as their main draw engine. But Secret Box is still, it's so good. But number 3, we got Unfair Stamp. This card's so good as well. It's an ace spec. You can only play this if one of your Pokemon is knocked out during your last turn, but each player shuffles their hand into their deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 2. This is absurdly good. You can compare it to Iono, Roxanne, Ace Trainer, but the big thing is this draws you cards. One thing I didn't say, Secret Box like bails you out of bad hands. Unfair Stamp generally will bail you out of bad hands, but you need multiple Pokemon in play, and it is kind of reactive, so it's not quite as good for bailing you out of bad hands as Secret Box, which will just completely bail you out of any bad hand. If your hand's bad, you just play Secret Box. You got like a perfect hand. Unfair Stamp is not that. But the idea is this just punishes your opponent so much, especially for taking an early knockout. They got a Cramorant turn 1, boom, you just completely destroy their hand. So that's insane. Pretty much like this discourages your opponents from going for knockouts that are just not super high value, that aren't super actively, like it essentially discourages your opponents from taking knockouts before they have a well set up board. Admittedly, certain cards, notably there was like Drizzile in the past, and just on play abilities that are important for decks. If your deck is built around that, that'll be really destroyed by Unfair Stamp. But those aren't so common right now. Right now we see Pidgeot EX. You could shut off with Iron Thorns EX, but I don't know. That's not every deck's playing Iron Thorns EX and attacking with it. Most decks aren't. But Unfair Stamp is, it's good for punishing a lot of things. And also, like in general scenarios, Shuffle Draw 5, not on your supporter, is really good. It's kind of absurd. And then and Shuffle Draw 5 is a supporter. And then force your opponent shuffle down to 2, Shuffle Draw 2. That's like really difficult to deal with. I think this card is really good. I don't think it's definitively the best ace spec. I think Secret Box is great in certain scenarios. Unfair Stamp, great in certain scenarios. Prime Catcher, great in certain scenarios. And Legacy Energies is really good as well. It's more situational, but potentially higher value in these situations. But Unfair Stamp is really great. Unfair Stamp and Secret Box, to me, are the best 2 ace specs because they can bail you out of bad hands. That's what made Computer Search so good. Part of what made it so good. If you have like a completely terrible garbage hand, but you have Computer Search, you can get out of it, and Unfair Stamp kind of gives you that. It actually gives you like a step up as well. Obviously, you won't always have this to punish your opponent, but if you do run Arvins or Iridas, or like any search, but probably those 2, you can just grab this. Of course, you are not grabbing some other item, but you're drawing. You're essentially playing a supporter, so it's really good. As I said, you want to compare You want to compare these aspects to supporters. You can't compare Legacy Energy to a supporter, but Unfair Stamp, it just looks like a supporter. This could be a supporter, a really good supporter as well, especially because this is always giving you hand advantage. Hand advantage is sometimes talked about. It's not like that important of a thing. Um, just having more cards than your opponent, but with Unfair Stamp, it's nice. It's just such a big deal having three more. Like 5 cards is a solid hand. 2 cards is terrible. You might have what you need if you have 2 cards, and I think it's going to come down to luck a little as well. If you unfair stamp, you can unfair stamp your opponent into like nothing valuable at all, and just win the game off of that, which is insane, assuming that they don't have their engine set up. Of course, it is a reactive A spec, so people might actually start playing more passively because of this. But if your opponent's just not taking knockouts because you might have unfair stamp up your sleeve, then your opponent's not taking knockouts. So, that doesn't feel too bad either. There are certain weird dynamics in the TCG right now, which I think make this a little worse because there are times when you just wouldn't want to take a knockout anyway, even if you could, because of like the 2 prize, 1 prize trade, which is a little weird, but Unfair Stamp is still really good card. Now we got the 2 10 out of 10 cards, and I will say that there is a gap between the top 2 cards, but this card's still so good. Cornerstone Mask, Ogerpon EX. I've said this. Okay. I have the name wrong at top. It's Cornerstone Mask, Ogerpon EX. I missed the Ogerpon, but yeah, that's what it is. This card, I think I said, it was revealed, and I thought it was fake. Its ability just makes it immune to attacks, damage from attacks by Pokemon that have an ability. Most Pokemon in the game have an ability, so it's immune to most Pokemon in the game. Mimikyu is similar in that it's immune to most of the main attackers, but every Pokemon evolves from a Pokemon that can damage this, or that can damage Mimikyu. Sure, most of them can damage this as well, but this has a lot of HP, and it does sizable damage, and it's just really good. I think this card is going to be include in a lot of decks and make a lot of decks drastically better. Lone Vulpix V-Star is a really solid card right now, but it's not played because 1, it's an evolution, 2, its HP for the stage, stage 1 essentially is low. 3, it gives up multiple prizes, which this gives up multiple prizes too, but 4, it's on the attack, meaning that your opponent can double gust around it, or can just, before it's set up, people powered up with Arceus V-Star, they gust it before it gets a chance to attack and knock it out. This can't be powered up by Arceus V-Star, which is obviously, whatever, not ideal, but it's always, the ability is always on in essentially every scenario. There isn't path to the peak, right? So, or there isn't a silent lab, which would also stop this. It expanded, there is, but not standard. So yeah, your opponent just might not be able to do anything about this at all, ever. A lone Vulpix V-Star could be played in control. I played it. I loved it in control, but you had to attack with it, and it was an evolution. You had to evolve it. You had to do these weird things. You had to do weird combos sometimes just to kind of keep it alive, and it wasn't, always alive either. This Pokemon just popped in control, stick in the active. Your opponent just can't do anything about it, or maybe they can, but it's a 1 card basic attack. Of course, its attack is not colorless. If its attack was colorless, and it was this versatile, it would be insane. It would be like completely broken. I think it is broken. 10 out of 10 cards I think are broken. So yeah, this card I think is broken. It just like walls essentially every attacker not every attacker. But I'm like running through the attackers in my head. It doesn't wall Giratina V-Star. It doesn't wall Roaring Moon EX. It doesn't wall Iron Hands EX, but Iron Hands is actually not one-shotting this, so it doesn't really matter too much. There's some different things going on there, but Roaring Moon EX not walling, that's not ideal, and Giratina V-Star not walling that's not ideal, but those are just two. It walls Charizard, it walls Chimpao, it walls Lugia, although it doesn't wall Chinchino, it doesn't wall everything, but a card's just because a card doesn't auto win every single matchup in the entire game does not mean it's not good. It's still insane. It auto wins against a lot of the top decks in the game, which is just so insane. Like they just can't do anything. They can kind of try to do something, but this is a 1 card tech. It's insane. So, or maybe a few cards, maybe 1 card, a fighting energy or whatever. But this card's so broken, it's really good. But the number 1 card, Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX. If you've been paying attention to the set, this card's like by far the best card. I think. I don't know. I'm sure some people might say differently, but it is. It's the best card, right? It's a basic 8. I thought so when I first saw this card revealed. I was like, I thought this was a stage 2. I just missed that it was a basic. I was tired or something. But I was like, oh, okay, this card looks, it's an okay stage 2, but it's not that good for a stage 2. It probably won't see too much like competitive play. And then I realized it was a basic. So this is kind of absurd. Its HP is 260 on a basic. This is just absurd, right? Like this is we have seen levels like this, I guess, but not really, right? It's a two prizer basic 260 HP. That just like you could literally just play it for its HP. People have played. I don't know. I mean, its HP is just absurd, though. It's really good, right? And then, of course, it has its attack slash ability together. It's 240 for 5, and it can't attack next turn. But its attack, that specific attack, its ability says it costs one colorless less for each prize card your opponent's taken. That's Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard is really good. The reason it doesn't see play, there are two reasons it doesn't see play in every deck. One, it's a fire Pokemon. Not every deck's a fire deck. Radiant Charizard is fire, so it's played in Charizard EX, which is fire energy. But not other decks, right? If you're a fire deck, you pretty much always play Radiant Charizard. You could run Radiant Heatran. It's a bit of a weird card, but Radiant Charizard generally the play. But then other decks do go out of their way to tech in Radiant Charizard because it's so good. But then the second thing is that it's a Radiant Pokemon. So there are other Radiant Pokemon you want to play. So, like, notably Radiant Greninja. Radiant Greninja is really, really good. It's by far the best Radiant Pokemon. It's a really solid draw engine. Not a full draw engine, because it's only one card, but it's pretty close. And, of course, on top of that, it also has a really insanely good attack. Not broken, but it's... Well, we talked about Greninja EX. It's a stage 2, and this attack's a little bit better, but not that much better. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, some of you may know that card. That card was, like, absurdly good. Definitely, like, top 10, top 5 VMAXs probably. And that was a three prizer stage 1 essentially. And it's, again, better than Radiant Greninja, but not drastically in terms of its attack. But Radiant Greninja is a basic, right? So Radiant Greninja is really, really, really good. Arguably broken. I think a lot of people criticize the Radiant mechanic, not too much because like it's not. Radiant Greninja isn't completely game breaking, but it's still really good. But Radiant Greninja is by far the best Radiant. Radiant Charizard is close, though. It's pretty. It's the top one's Radiant Greninja, and sorry, my voice, it's allergy season. But then the second one is Radiant Charizard, and then there's a gap, right? There are other ones that are okay, but it's definitely Radiant Greninja, then Radiant Charizard. But why would you? But this is just Radiant Charizard. It is a two prizer, which is a downside. In obviously, it's just worse to give up more prizes. But outside of that, literally everything else is better or the same. So you can attack the same like turns. It's the same exact attack cost, except it's colorless. So you can play this in any deck. And on after they've taken 5 prizes, it's actually free. So that's really good. I mean, you don't need any energy on it. You can just attach a tree. Radiant Charizard, again, if it's 1 energy, you can probably pay it, but there are times when you can't even afford to pay 1 energy, but you don't even need to worry about this with this card. This is like the best stat line ever. 260 HP, 240 for very cheap. And this can be paid early on. 5 energy, kind of absurd. But certainly 3 energy can be paid. If you really have to, you could pay this with 4 or 5 energy, say against control. It's pretty rough, but it is technically doable. And really, any that can pay it eventually. Again, I get control, probably not doing anything all game. So if you do have to manually attach, it's not good, right? But it is what it is. It could be worse, right? It does do 10 less than Radiant Charizard as well. That is a bit of a pain if you're boosting it to certain damage numbers. Most notably, that 280 mark, you are going to be 10 short with Choice Belt. But I mean, come on, right? It's so good. This card could be played in literally every deck and be the best attacker in every deck in the entire game. This is probably the best one. This might be the best. I think this is the best card I've ever seen. It's absurdly good. It makes Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX look bad. It's that good. I mean, okay, Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX will actually beat you. It does not hit weakness, but it will beat you because you can't hit it. But this card this card is so good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just so good. It's yeah. It doesn't obviously one shot really like the big EXs, the big stage 2 EXs, or even the stage 1 EXs, but it does one shot pretty much every basic in the entire game outside of this one. And it will survive hits. You don't really want to be banking on it surviving hits on the last turn of the game, and your opponent like not having gust. But at the end of the day, you would definitely lose the game if you didn't have this card, and now you have like a 50% chance to lose this game with this one card, right? This is just one card. It's a basic, so you just toss this down one shot, like whatever, or maybe you two shot it. You do have to switch, but that's like what? That's not that big of a deal. A bit annoying, could cost you games, but because this card can bail you out of so many situations. You could just be like losing a game and then you just win the game because you play this. Um, will it survive hits? It won't always survive hits, but even if it doesn't, it's still so good. This card's so broken. But I'm looking forward to it. I don't think it's gonna be like game ruining. It is at the end of the game and any deck can play it. It's not like, oh, I have to be playing a Bloodmoon or Ursaluna EX deck. No, it's probably a one of because it doesn't need to be anything more than that. Maybe a two of. It could be a two of, but probably a one of because you're probably only attacking with it once. But again, it's so good. You don't have to. You can attack with it twice. That's fine. Um, yeah, I mean, what do I say about this? It is so good. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. Also, comment down below your thoughts. Also, on the grading scale, if you found it good or confusing, I could always stop it. But as I said, checked out down below in the comments or description, maybe both. Hopefully not neither. If I forgot, tell me, but I hope I remembered. To put down the full big board of all the cards from the set and I think are of note, and tell me if I missed any that you think are deserving of a ranking. If not, it's a 0 out of 10, which is obviously, probably not really worth much of anything. But yeah, Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX, easy 10 out of 10. This card's really good. But I am looking forward to it. I think it will actually be okay for the game. Is it balanced? No. But is it like fair? Yeah, I think it is. But I'm excited to see you in the next video.